Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me today because honestly, we're about to explore a monumental shift that is happening right now in the world of science. For the last few years, we've all been pretty amazed by AI acting as a really smart chatbot. We've watched it pass standardized tests, write code, draft our emails, you name it. But today, we're looking at how AI is evolving from just being a test taker into a literal, pioneering research collaborator. We are going to look closely at Anthropic's new evaluation framework, which is called Mystery Bench, and see exactly how AI is now taking on incredibly complex, real-world scientific mysteries. And, spoiler alert, it's actually solving problems that panels of top human experts fundamentally cannot.
Okay, let's dive into this. We already know that large language models can easily ace the bar exam or solve crazy Olympiad math problems, right? But those are self-contained, human-vetted benchmarks. Evaluating an AI on the incredibly messy, open-ended reality of biological research, well, that is a completely different challenge. The question isn't whether an AI can just recall facts from a textbook anymore. The real question is, can it look at raw, noisy data and actually discover things that human scientists are completely blind to?
All right, Section 1, where AI and science are.
So to really understand this intersection, we first have to realize why evaluating a scientist, whether they're human or artificial, is notoriously difficult. I mean, doctors have board exams, lawyers have the bar, but there is no standardized test for becoming a scientist. Instead, there are basically three fundamental hurdles in benchmarking biological science. First off, there are multiple right ways to answer a question. If there was only one single path to a scientific truth, PhD students would probably finish their degrees in a few months. How a scientist tackles a problem really depends on their unique skills and resources. Second, individual research decisions are highly subjective, and in really noisy biological datasets, those tiny choices can lead to totally different conclusions. And third, the ultimate frontier, there are just a lot of biological questions that humans fundamentally cannot answer yet.
Let's look at a concrete example of this noisy data problem because it's fascinating. Why do some type 2 diabetics respond perfectly to the drug metformin while others just don't? Well, in 2011, a paper came out reporting that a specific genetic variant perfectly predicted the response. Huge news, right? But then, just a year later, the Diabetes Prevention Program tested that exact same variant and found absolutely nothing. Zero. Then, later that same year, in 2012, a meta-analysis pulled multiple cohorts together and decided, well, actually, the effect is real, but it's much more modest. It's a total roller coaster. And it perfectly shows how human subjectivity and just slight differences in study design can lead to wildly contradictory conclusions over time. Science is messy.
Moving on to Section 2, new Metric Mystery Bench.
So, if human science is literally this messy, how on earth do we fairly test an AI? Well, to strip away all that human bias and test for pure objective truth, Anthropic researchers basically constructed an entirely new kind of interrogation room, Mystery Bench. This is a brand new benchmark made up of 99 objective bioinformatics questions written by actual domain experts. But here is the absolute genius part. These questions are derived from real-world verified ground truth, things like the physical properties of data or validated metadata, rather than just subjective scientific conclusions. And it is completely method agnostic. Claude is given basic bioinformatics tools, some database access, and is graded purely on arriving at the correct biological conclusion. It doesn't matter what analytical route it took to get there.
To give you a real sense of what Claude is up against here, look at this exact question straight from the benchmark. Which human organ is this cell-type single-cell RNA-seq dataset derived from? Now, if you're not familiar, think of RNA-seq as a highly complex, massive snapshot of exactly which genes are turned on or off in a cell at any given moment. This question brilliantly illustrates the incredibly complex, raw data mysteries the AI was tasked with solving. I mean, it's not just answering multiple choice, it's acting as a full-on detective, combing through raw DNA or RNA sequencing data, looking for the underlying biological truth hidden inside all that noise.
All right, Section 3, intuition rivaling experts.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it frames the results. So how did Claude actually do? Well, first, the researchers baselined all the questions and found that 76 out of the 99 were considered human-solvable. That just means at least one expert out of a panel of 5 could solve them from scratch. When Claude tackled these, it performed totally on par with the human experts, and sometimes it mirrored their strategies exactly. But other times, it found completely novel routes, relying on what almost looks like an artificial intuition. Instead of strictly using rigid algorithms to annotate datasets, Claude intuitively recognized patterns in the raw sequences. Think back to how the first eukaryotic promoter, which is basically the on switch for a gene, was discovered. A human scientist literally just noticed the sequence tata repeating over and over again upstream of genes. This kind of intuitive, pattern-recognizing leap is historically what drives massive scientific breakthroughs. Traditional machine learning models really struggle with this, but large language models like Claude, they're doing it at an unprecedented scale.
And now for Section 4, Challenging Human Unsolvable Problems.
But right here is where this explainer reaches its real climax. What about the questions the humans simply couldn't solve? Let's talk about AI actually tackling the true unknown. Out of the 99 questions in the benchmark, there were 23 verified objective biological questions where that panel of 5 expert human scientists entirely failed. Even though the signal is definitively verified to exist in the data, the human experts fundamentally lacked the knowledge or the ability to find it. They literally couldn't separate the signal from the noise.
And here is the massive breakthrough. When tasked with these exact same human unsolvable problems, Claude Mythos Preview achieved a 30% solve rate. Just think about that. Almost a third of the biological mysteries that completely baffled top human experts were cracked by the AI. For example, there were instances where humans couldn't identify the origin of heavily degraded, incredibly noisy tumor samples, but Claude successfully managed to map those subtle genetic echoes back to the exact source tissue. This is a profound moment. AI is no longer just keeping up with trained scientists. In the most difficult frontiers of biological data, it is actually pulling ahead.
So how exactly does the AI achieve this superhuman feat? Well, researchers analyzing Claude's transcripts identified 2 primary, actionable investigative strategies that really set it apart from the human experts. The first one is what they call the know-it-all strategy, and the second is knowing when you don't know. Let's break these down, because they are absolutely fascinating.
The know-it-all strategy basically leverages the AI's unique, incredibly vast underlying knowledge base. Imagine a human expert trying to solve a really niche problem. They might need to spend weeks, maybe months, running a meta-analysis or awkwardly trying to stitch together a bunch of different disconnected databases. Claude does this instantly. It synthesizes cross-domain knowledge, combining structural biology, molecular profiles, and data from literally hundreds of thousands of papers in mere seconds. It holds the entire context of modern biological literature in its active memory all at once. No human could do that.
So the crucial point is how it handles the things it isn't certain about. And that brings us to the second strategy, knowing when you don't know. When Claude is uncertain, it doesn't just guess or force a fit. It actively acknowledges the uncertainty in the data, tries multiple entirely different analytical approaches, and then carefully chooses the answer where converging lines of evidence align. It layers multiple methods to rigorously verify its own work. Honestly, this level of methodical rigor is a practice that human scientists can and really should learn from.
What you should really take away from all this is perfectly summarized by this quote from the researchers themselves. Frontier models are now genuinely useful collaborators for bioinformatics research. These biomystery bench results prove that AI has permanently evolved. It's not just a tool you use to spell check your paper or format your citations anymore. It is a highly capable scientific partner that can navigate the messy reality of biology, design its own analytical routes, and actually discover truths that human eyes simply cannot see. Which leaves us with this final, truly awe-inspiring thought. If a frontier model can already solve 30% of the bioinformatics problems that top human experts completely fail at, we are standing on the edge of an entirely new era in scientific discovery. So I want to leave you with this question to ponder today. What happens to our understanding of the universe and our medical advancements when the very first Nobel Prize-winning discovery is completely co-authored by AI? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope it sparked your curiosity about the incredible future of human-AI collaboration.